Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Disruptor Discussions Masterclass featuring Aleasha Bahr. I'm so excited to have you here. To give you guys a little background about us, Appreciated Assets started 6 years ago. I had spent my whole career leading up to this in sales and business development and really developed an expertise during that time in the top of the funnel activity, prospecting and appointment setting. And so we launched our business offering a concierge level done for you appointment setting service for our clients, setting them new business appointments with their prospect wish list. And that has been growing fast and furious over the last several years. And I started Disruptor Discussions because as we developed out our Disruptor Designer method, which is our proprietary messaging platform that we take our clients through, we realized that I had met so many incredible people with so much incredible knowledge over the last few years that I really wanted to share that with my whole community and with everyone out there who wants more information on how to grow your business. Because just like our mission is to create a ripple effect and help our clients grow their businesses, there's so many other ways to create more revenue in your business. And so I'm bringing on incredible experts from all over that I've met and sharing their expertise with you so you can take what you will from there and hopefully also connect with them after to do a deeper dive. Okay, what is new? So I'm back from the Cape. A few weeks of vacation, which was amazing, and I'm back in the sweaty South, which I did not necessarily miss July in Charleston. But here we are. I'd love to tell you I'm so relaxed and rested, but you jump right in, and that's not exactly how that works. But I'm so grateful that I was able to get up there for a little bit. And back here now and ready to get into the swing of things. I feel like we're ready for fall already. I am here to introduce Aleasha, who I'm so glad is here. Aleasha and I met a few years ago through a women's networking group that we're both a part of. And I feel like we just had this like instant chemistry and alignment and saw each other because we're both doing things in sales very, very differently than the way it's always been done. You know, something that I say often is that I want to change the narrative about what sales can look like, what it should look like. And man, is Aleasha aligned with that. She really, really changes the dynamic of what a sales conversation should look like. She's not that sleazeball, like that used car parking lot. What do I have to do to get you in this car that we all have in our head of what sales is? She puts that story right into the garbage. And I love that. So I'm so excited to share her. I'm going to read her bio. Aleasha Bahr is a sales strategist, speaker, best-selling author, and founder of the Black Sheep Sales Method. Because if it's a fit, it's a fact, and there's no selling involved. Aleasha, I use that all the time, just so you know.
Awesome.
I credit you as well. She has 15 years of experience customizing sales strategies to your personality, audience, and service, because sales is not a one-size-fits-all. Her methods empower business owners to effortlessly convert up to 80% of their leads without pressure, pitching, or pretending to be someone else. She sold $50 million plus in services herself and has helped others sell $17.5 million over the last 4 years alone with her proven personalized approach. So Aleasha, I'm going to hand things over to you. Thank you so much for being here. I want you to tell us all about what it is that you do and how you really change the sales game. And everybody, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A for us, and we will make sure to get there and get all those questions answered.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. And I love anyone who is representing that sales doesn't have to be the way mainstream the mainstream strategy that is widely promoted. Because the issue up to this point is there's not really been an alternative that people can identify. And mainstream sales deviates so drastically from a regular human conversation that it's out of alignment for most people and feels really uncomfortable. And then you work with somebody, like if anybody here has done sales training, they probably told you to do something that felt weird. And you said, this feels weird. And they said, it doesn't matter, do it anyway. But you should definitely listen to your intuition, because if you feel weird, then your prospect definitely feels weird too. And you've been on a call when a seller felt weird delivering some weird sales strategy. Like, you know that feeling. You're like, oh, it's just like so cringy, but they don't have an alternative and they don't know what to do. And winging it doesn't get the same results because you're just sort of like verbally vomiting everywhere. So there are really clear ways to navigate a sales conversation that are going to be more effective. And I'm just going to lay them out here comparatively. So mainstream sales is everyone is a yes. If they have a working credit card, everyone's a yes. This feels to a buyer like commission breath, if you've never heard that saying before. It's like, I don't care what your concern is. I don't care what your situation is. If you have money, I want it. And it's super short term thinking. So I spent time in corporate for like 10 years selling digital marketing for a newspaper. And if you know anything about newspapers, you know that they have really powerful digital assets, lots of website traffic, lots of emails. And I was always a natural at sales. So when you ask a natural, like, how are you so good at sales? Like, what do you do? They're like, I don't really sell. And you're like, well, what the hell does that mean? And the reason that they say that is that everyone is not a yes, right? They're telling someone when you don't actually need that highest level package, like you don't need all those bells and whistles. Based on your situation, you would be just fine with the middle or even the lower option. Or you actually don't need this service. You want to go over here and get this other one and then come back at this point. And it's absolutely magnetic for buyers. And what it comes down to at its core is just actually caring about the other person. So the goal isn't just to get a sale. And the buyer can feel that, and they trust you, and they want to refer you, and they want to work with you, and they find a way to work with you, and they come back because there's so few people that they feel like they can trust aren't going to steer them. Like, they think everyone's going to steer them in the wrong direction. So when they find someone who's going to keep it real with them, they're like, oh, thank God, I need this in my life. So it's really about understanding somebody's situation. Like, what are their expectations? What are their goals? And what's their timeline? And does that match up with what you do? And if it does, then it's very easy to transition into the sale and say, all right, I can do that for you. I can meet with you. I can create those campaigns. I can get that result for you in 3 months. Like, let's do it. And it's just really more effortless, right? And it's also leaving space at the same time for someone to not be a fit. And that's okay. There's no judgment in it, right? When the natural salesperson is saying, like, you don't need this bells and whistle offer, they're not like, you're broke, gross. Like, that's not what's happening, right? They're like, I'm basing this on your needs, and your needs just don't require this. They don't fit this, I'll sell it to you if you want, but I'm just telling you, like, you don't necessarily need it. So like, I was just on a podcast where we were talking about, for example, this happens a lot with like paid ads agencies. Somebody will sign up to work with a paid ads agencies, but they just started business. So they have no idea what messaging or audience works, or even have like a working offer. So a paid ad agency, a good salesperson would say, actually, unless you have 3 months to just a financial runway and you don't need results to simply test messaging, audiences, and offers, I really wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend going organic first. And once you find something that people want, then putting money behind it. But what happens is people just sign them up, and then they get burned because they don't get any results, and they wasted a ton of money, and they leave, and they never come back, and they're resistant and scared to ever do anything again. They're not going to refer you business. So yeah, you got their money for 3 months, but you lost so much by doing that. And that's the difference between black sheep sales and mainstream sales at its core, at its heart. And then the other thing that's there, I mean, there's a lot that's really different about black sheep sales. It really mirrors a regular conversation. And so the 3 things that are most important for you to succeed with it are empathy, curiosity, and passion. So mainstream sales is like charm, high energy, smile a lot, comfortable with being aggressive. And to be honest, like the sales landscape looks like this because for so long, and still, it's dominated by aggressive white men selling to aggressive white men. So it works well for those people. However, there's a diversity and wide variety of decision makers and sellers now that will only continue to increase. So somebody, including a white guy who's not aggressive, is not going to respond well to that strategy. And they're not going to respond well selling. They're not going to like selling like that either. So it's really like important at this point in 2024 to not sell the same way we did in the 1950s, in the 1980s. Like the world is different, right? And you're selling to a different personality that values different things. And it's so important to do that discovery to understand what the person values. So I have this example, right? Of when you want, let's say you want to invite a friend to a baseball game. And you have two friends that you can convince. You really want them to come because you really want to go to this game. One of them's single. And so you're like, look, I'll buy you a beer and there's a singles area and we can totally mingle. However, if you're going to try to convince your friend who's married with children, you're not going to talk about that. And they don't drink either. You're going to be like, oh, come on, we'll get some fresh air. It's outside. You're going to talk about, we got a really great spot behind the home plate. And here's the thing, they're both the same game, right? They're just positioned differently for the person that you're talking to based on what's going to motivate them. So the difference in a sales conversation is you just don't know what motivates somebody yet. You don't know that they're married and they don't drink. So often in mainstream sales, people are just guessing, right? They're just guessing what somebody wants and they're not even asking if it's accurate. The only question they'll ask is like, make sense or sound good? And both of those are something you can say yes to on autopilot. Because have you ever had a conversation where you asked somebody, does that make sense? And they said yes, and you got to the end of the conversation and they asked a question that made it very clear that it did not make sense. So you're missing valuable feedback. And when you do this, when you just guess kind of at what somebody wants, you end up leaving the call. They're like, great, sounds good, I'll get back to you. And you have no idea why they didn't buy because you didn't get any feedback at any point. And saying, do you have any questions is not going to get the feedback you need. So in black sheep sales, you ask check-in questions throughout the conversation. When you explain something, does that sound different than what you've done before? Does that sound more effective? Does that line up with what you had in mind? Does that fit into your timeline? Does that fit into your strategy? Where does that fit in? Like that's information that's going to help you adjust your conversation to position it for what the person wants and needs. Not in the way that you're lying about your offer. You just are going to focus on the right elements of your offer for the other person. So like I was on a podcast just recently also for like a trade show thing. And what happens a lot at trade shows is people will be like, tell me about your machine at a booth, right? And the person will just list everything, like all the features and benefits, like all the different use cases. And the person's like completely overwhelmed. It's like, well, tell me about your company. Like, what do you need? Like ask some questions. Yeah. So a lot of people do ask questions in the discovery process, but the questions they've gotten are super generic. So mainstream sales just has generic messaging. It's like, what's your goal? You know, sometimes they don't even ask what you've done before. Please ask what you've done before. It's like really important to solve this challenge that you're dealing with. And then you want to ask questions that are specific to your offer that you just can't use a one-size-fits-all framework for. Like, for example, I, worked with, I give this one example all the time and someone told me that I give it too much. So I'm trying to think of like a different example because I don't know if everybody's like heard it before. Let me think about, okay. So one of my new clients, he works with loan officers, right? And loan officers, they get into the business of selling mortgages and they have no training. The only training that they get from somebody is about regulations. Like this is how to not go to jail, basically. And if it's about business building, they're like, go talk to realtors. There's not even advice on how to talk to realtors. There's not advice on strategy. There's not advice about anything having to do with an actual business. So because the person that I'm working with supports them in those elements that they haven't had support with, one of the questions we ask is, you know, what kind of business mentorship have you gotten as an LO? You know, did you get these process pieces for your business? Did you get this? Did you get that? And it's to uncover that no, they didn't. And you connect the dot for them that that's really difficult, that you're guessing at business. And if you had somebody who could tell you exactly what to do and guide you through it, you know, do you feel like that would make a difference for you? So having that question that's very specific to your audience's situation and very specific to your offer is going to allow you to uncover information that is more relevant and valid and compelling for positioning your offer in a way that makes the other person want it. You're not going to get the right information just by asking generic questions like, what are your goals, right? Yeah. So how much time do I have? Because I could keep
You're
going.
good. You can go for a few more. Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing that mainstream sales does is they have the question and answer section as kind of like an interrogation, like you're like drilling the other person. And then you are supposed to take their answers and mirror those answers back to them in like a monologue sounding pitch, or you just focus on the result and are really vague on the details. Because some salespeople are like, yeah, you don't want a monologue pitch because everybody tunes out. So just keep it vague and say that it's going to give them exactly what they want, right? If they want blue-haired unicorns with stars, that's what you say that you sell. And so this results in a lot of people getting burned because they're not clear on what they're buying. And there's refunds, and there's upset clients, and there's nightmare clients, and there's demanding clients. It's just not good for either person. And I should clarify that, like, my focus is really for people who have long-term client relationships that are high touch, that are like not like you're going to have a relationship with this client. You don't want to bring them in, but based on a lie, right? That's not going to be a good experience for you as the person delivering that service. So yeah, you really miss an important opportunity in the discovery section of the conversation that isn't just like asking a question, getting an answer, and then asking the next question. Like somebody's guard is down during that discovery portion. They don't expect you to sell them. And you can give feedback on their answers that are relevant to their answer right there in that moment. So for example, if somebody says like, yeah, well, I worked with a marketing agency and they had terrible communication. Like I couldn't get a hold of them unless it was time to re-sign. And you want to have empathy for that, right? I call this pitch weaving. So you're basically weaving the pitch throughout the discovery section. So there's not all this heavy lifting on the pitch section. So you're able to say, that's incredibly frustrating when you trust someone and you give them your money and you can't get a response from them. And something that makes a huge difference is having a chat portal that you can access at any time. And like some type of guarantee around the response time, or there's a consequence like money's taken off your payment or something, or you get something free, added value. You know, would that make you feel more comfortable? Again, you want to ask, does that sound like something you want? Like, does that help? Like, instead of just rolling on and having no idea if they like what you said and just assuming. So it's this, and notice that I didn't say we offer a chat portal. We. That's selling. People will feel like you're just selling them from the very beginning of the conversation. It's really empathy and a piece of insight into what happened and what could go, what could be different. Like, so there's hope for that, right? Oh, there's hope. Maybe I wouldn't have this experience again with an agency that did that, right? So it's really throughout the conversation, an exchange rather than these really separated parts in mainstream sales that are like question and answer, pitch, objection handling. And that's another thing is that in mainstream sales, they're like, don't talk about the objections. Like if you talk about the objections, you're putting them in their head. Like just pretend like objections don't exist and deal with them at the end of the conversation. And the thing is, just because you're not talking about them does not mean they don't exist. And it's going to be far more effective to talk about them in the middle or beginning of the conversation than at the end when you're coming from a defensive position, right? Because they're expecting you at that point to just dismiss whatever their objection is, right? Which is not convincing, by the way. It's what you expect. You know, you offer a concern and they're like, well, it's not really a concern because da 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 da. And you're like, whatever. this person didn't hear me. And I don't trust them, right? So instead, you want to know the common objections about your service and prompt them, right? So you're going to be like, how much time do you have invested in this? What's your timeline? Do you have at least 3 months? Do you need results before then? Because we're going to do our best, but sometimes it's 3 months. So I do not want you to like be in a bad position, basically, whatever the common objections are, you're going to ask them and discuss them transparently and collaboratively ahead of time. And as a result, you don't really have that many objections at the end to deal with at all. And another difference is mainstream sales treats objections like you're going into battle, like you're defending, you're slaying the dragon, like I'm going to win. Like mainstream sales is like there's a winner and there's a loser, and black sheep sales is like we're on the same team. Like, do you need this? Does this work? Can I provide you what you're looking for? Or guide you somewhere else or whatever. So when somebody presents an objection and like, well, this seems expensive, and they're just like, well, it's really not because da 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 da. You're like, not convinced, right? So you really want to deal with objections with curiosity. Like, let's get some more information. Expensive compared to what? So often people aren't comparing apples to apples. So it's really like understanding what you're thinking of, and then, well, does that solution have this? So like a good example would be a lot of like coaching courses online and stuff. People will be like comparing it to a Udemy course that's like $200. And it's like, okay, does it make a difference that there's 24/7 support you can access at any time if you get stuck? And if it doesn't make a difference to that person, then they're not a fit. And that's okay. You can get the cheapest option. We're not the cheapest option. And we add all of this value because we're for the person who wants this extra support, who wants success faster, who wants accelerated result, whatever. And there's not judgment about it. It's just understanding what it is that you want. And if it's not us, that's okay. So that is a lot of information. I mean, I can keep going, but should we go to questions?
Yeah, we've got some questions that have come in, and I've got some questions. So we have the 3 questions that we ask every week, and I'll get there. But before I do, you just said something about kind of the transactions versus relationships, which is something that we talk about a lot. That there's 3 legs of a business that you can control. So price, speed, and quality. And I believe really strongly that when you focus on price or speed, you're building transactions. And with some quality, which can also assist with speed and price, by the way, but when it's really a value-based proposition and based on the quality, then you're building relationships that can last and that can scale your business. So I really just kind of wanted to reiterate that, because I think that's so important that people remember, if someone buys you on price and someone comes behind you and they're 2% cheaper or 3% faster, they're gone.
Yeah.
And so it's really about having that holistic value proposition in front of them. I think that's so important. One of the things, and I don't think you mentioned this, but you've said this before to me when we've talked about, you'll say, does that feel different? And it's similar to what you had said, but that's a prompt that you use that I really like. How you say, does that feel different from what you've currently doing? Or does that feel like, and I really like the way that works in conversation, because it's not even though it is a yes or no answer, it doesn't lead to a yes or no answer. Does that make sense? Oh, sorry.
No, so it's okay to say, does that make sense in regular conversation? It's just in a sales conversation when you need more information.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And I also just wanted to reiterate, you were talking about kind of the objections. And I was trained in New York City, and gosh, I hope we've got a big room today, so I'm hoping maybe one of my New York colleagues is on here. But anyway, I was trained in like this really classic New York sales training room, right? Where it's like objection, rebuttal, tout, close, like strong, like straight line close. And it was so aggressive.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way. It probably never did. But it doesn't have to be. So can you talk a little bit more about that? When someone gives an objection, I really liked how you said, well, we've got this and that pitch weaving with that.
Yeah.
The other thing I like to do is ask people like right out, what is the object? Like, what is it? Because what the objection is always, they'll tell you very easily. And sort of wait till the end doesn't really make sense either. So talk to me about objections, because it doesn't have to be a volley, right?
No, it should be collaborative. So if somebody tells you a concern, it's like, let's treat that concern like it could be valid. Like,
Right.
let's learn more about that. Like, what about that is concerning you? And does that apply? Like, maybe it does. Maybe you don't have enough time. And I don't want to convince you that you do, because you don't. So it's really coming at it from that, like, authentically your best interest in mind type of approach, and getting curious instead of just dismissing the concern or proving it or whatever. And sometimes, a lot of times when you get to the end of any buying conversation, a buyer is like, but what if I'm wrong? What if I'm an exception? All they did was tell me all the things that were good about it. I know there's bad stuff and they're just not telling me. And I don't know how to ask questions to get it. Like, what's the fine print? Who does this not work for? Like, and what if I'm one of them, and I lose this money and I'm wrong again and I feel bad. And that's like the conversation anybody's having in their mind. So it's helpful sometimes at the end, if they're just not moving forward for whatever reason, and they're not really sharing why, you can say something like, is there a concern that you would be an exception and not get results? Because from the information that I have, I don't see any reason that would happen. However, what am I missing?
Mm-hmm.
And then they can share what their concern is. Well, I just don't have this, and you can talk it through again from the point of view that maybe it's valid and they're not going to get results. And you don't want a client who's not going to get results.
Yeah. In my sales conversations, often I'll have people say, what questions should I be asking? And that's one of the things I'll say, I'll tell you when this doesn't work.
Yeah. Let me just tell you, this is when yeah. So a lot of times I recommend laying out, this doesn't work when, and almost always it's like, if you're not able to tap into me, like, this is something I say, like, you need to reach out to me. I'm going to dare you to annoy me. Nobody's been able to do it. The more communication, the better. I cannot possess your body or read your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
if you're just not going to get results otherwise,
Okay, so here's my questions. And guys, while I'm doing this, I've got some questions coming in. So please make sure you drop your questions in the Q&A. You've answered this, Aleasha, but give me high level. How does your solution, how does the black sheep sales method bring more revenue into a business?
Well, it brings more revenue into the business because when you're not focusing on getting everyone's money and instead on what is right for the person across from you, you ironically make a lot more money.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. We're all about disruption and appreciated asset. So tell me how you are a disruptor in your space. Again, I feel like it goes fast.
Yeah. So I just pretty much disagree with everything that mainstream sales does. I don't even think that sales is a numbers game, especially not for people. I mean, it's a numbers game in the way that you can look at, like, I need this many leads to convert this much. Although a lot of people feel like the answer is always more leads when you can just increase your conversion rate. They like forget that could change, like, doesn't have to be 20%. What if it's 40%? What if it's 60%? But like, they think that you just have to do this mass volume approach, right? And if you're someone who needs like 20, 25 clients a year to be happy, like, that kind of approach is actually going to hurt your business. So you really don't want to you want to be very intentional, and it stops being a numbers game when you stop treating people like numbers. When you're like, I'm just hitting you to see who I'm going to hit that says yes. You know what I mean? So it isn't that I deviate in that way. I deviate in the way that it's like not about manipulation or pressure. It's not about like psychological tricks. If you have a good offer, there's no reason to use psychological tricks and manipulation. Like, you can just understand someone's problem and have language that clearly explains what you do. And I mean, also, for whatever reason, a lot of sales experts, they don't help people with the language and messaging of their offer, like how to explain it. They're like, I don't know, you figure out how to do that. And it's like, that's the hardest part. So I really like create language that someone can feel confident represents their offer and is very appealing to their buyer.
I'm going to ask you the third question, but we have an extra couple minutes, so I want to make sure that you really reiterate this. When you talk about if it's a fit, it's a fact. Really talk about what that means in a sales conversation, because it has, understanding that for me has been a game changer.
I love that, Jennifer. It's so helpful. So a lot of people focus on who's a fit, and very few people focus on who is not a fit, like your anti-audience, basically. And you want to be super clear about it, right? So, for example, I was just doing this with another client. Like, you want to think about things like who's a fit. Okay, so I have another new client who does advertising for med spas, and the difference in their service is they offer sales process support in addition to leads. Mm-hmm. And so it's like the fit for them is someone who's really going to value that additional support. It's not for someone who's just looking for leads. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're just looking for the least expensive leads, it's not a fit. If you're just looking for leads, it's not a fit. If you don't have any interest in creating a sales process for your med spa, which I know sounds crazy, but there are definitely people like that, then it's not a fit. So it's not that there's a judgment of the people that are not a fit. You hear it's just like, okay, you just want leads. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. So whenever you're able to identify, like, do you feel like having sales processes and somebody reviewing those calls and providing weekly support, do you feel like that would make a big difference in your results, in these leads actually turning into clients? And if they say yes, then you're like, great, because that's what we do. And that's what we found is the big difference in someone actually making money from a lead generation service versus just getting a lead and like guessing at how, I mean, nobody has sales training. How is that supposed to work out? So right. It's really like, you understand who's a fit and who's not a fit, and you clearly discuss with the client if they're that person or not. And when you say who it does not work for, it's more magnetic for the person that it does work for, because they can say, oh, cool, I'm not that person. I know who you're talking about, and I'm not that person. So it's not just like, you're not coachable or whatever. That's like not criteria, which people sometimes say. You have to be coachable and you have to have a working credit card. It's not criteria, guys. That's like, think of it like you're dating and getting married. It's like, you have a pulse. Cool. Like, no, you're like, how are you with finances? What kind of life do you want? Do you want kids? Like, it's a relationship.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Last question. And then we're going to get a couple questions here for you. What's the number one thing today? Okay. Let me also say this. This question, we get the best feedback from our audience from. They love the answers that our guests bring for this question. So buckle up, you guys. What's the number one thing that we can do today, this afternoon in our business, to drive more revenue to our business from what you are telling us today?
Well, I would say probably follow up. So most people are following up incorrectly. They're like saying like, I'm following up, I'm touching base, I'm checking in, I'm circling back. Do you have any questions? Think about when you get that email. Do you want to answer it? No, because it's just like, are you going to buy my thing? And the answer is not my priority on telling you that I want to buy your thing or not. So you want to offer value to the other person somehow. Like maybe, like I have a client who does video for engineering firms. So it's like, hey, I just came across this article that talks about the power of video for engineering firms and the difference in results that people see. It made me think of you. Do you still want to do this for your company? So something that's going to like really pique their interest, make them more empowered, make their life easier, make their job easier, whatever. Or sometimes just even getting excited and reminding them like, hey, I just got off the phone with my client and they said that they got this result and I can't wait to do that for you too. Is that something that you still want to do? So I would say like, think of how you can bring value to a conversation that you've had and send them that email and ask a direct question at the end, not let me know. Because everybody's saying, let me know, and it's super passive and nobody has to answer it. It's like, did you make a decision yet? Is this something that you still want? Like something like that.
I love that. Thank you. I think follow-up is one of the biggest places that people drop the ball in that process because they create stories in their head without having the actual information from those prospects, right? So they stop following up because they haven't heard back, or because maybe they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Or because they've done it once or twice and haven't heard back. Well, maybe that person was on vacation for a week or has stuff going on with their kids. I mean, there's so many other things that have nothing to do with you as to why someone is not getting back to you. I mean, we certainly know that I have put quite a bit of persistence and consistency behind the follow-up in our business. And it's because we don't make up stories, right? Like, but I love the value, bringing value to every interaction. Another thing I'll add in there is I often invite people. I love to extend an invitation, whether it's to something virtual, to something in person, if someone's local. Any opportunity that I have to bring someone into my world, into bring them value in that interaction and that experience, I'm all about doing, because I really only want to work with people that I want to spend more time with, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that's been really, really valuable for the people, whether they work with me or not. Truly, I still love putting that energy out there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to some questions because I could do this all day with you.
Yes, I could too.
Okay, Larry says, I own a sales outsourcing company, but it's passive income now as I'm an entrepreneur. What you are talking about won't work for me as an entrepreneur, but it feels solid for a sales organization as a method. Do you make a distinction between sales and business development? It's a really good question.
Yeah, that is a really good question. And you're right, Larry. What I'm talking about isn't the biz dev part. It's like the part where the other person has given consent to the conversation. It's like, I'm interested. What's up? Like, let me hear about it. So biz dev is different, and it's something that you have to test a lot of things. It's about messaging. Really, it's Jennifer's zone of genius. There are so many different ways to do it. Like, I really like having workshops. I think that what's really important to focus on is like what feels good to you as an option for biz dev. If you hate cold calling, don't do it, or hire Jennifer. Or if you hate social, don't do it. Do networking. Is it effortless for you to have conversations with people? Like, really go with, they all work, and the one that's going to work the best for you is the one that feels easiest to you. So that usually comes with some trial and error. And it also takes trial and error in the initial message that you're sending out, which I know Jennifer can definitely attest to. It's like, did this one work? Did this message work? Did this, offer? Did this carrot? And so there's a lot more patience needed with that type of thing. But when I did biz dev, I always just really picked people that I was excited about. And I was what I call an idea seller. So I'd be like, I have a great idea. Like, you have this event coming up. Why don't we do all this cool stuff for it?
Yeah, I love that. And I also think that if you can get people to hand raise, right? If you can get people, you can give a message that resonates with that ideal avatar, they are going to hand raise. They're going to tell you that's me,
Yeah.
right? And it will really naturally lead to a conversation. Okay,
And I would
Mark.
say
I'm sorry.
one thing also is, like, in the initial outreach, do not pitch them. That is not a sales conversation. Set up a separate conversation. This happens a lot. So people will be networking and then they'll like sell them. And it's like, no, be like, it sounds like there could be some alignment. This is what I solved. Do you want to have a separate conversation about it?
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Mark, he says, very non-aggressive white guy here. Never liked selling aggressive, too aggressive white guys. Always out there, put the cart before the horse.
And they do. Yeah.
I just lost my place. My first sales job, I was 20, and they wanted high pressure gross profit generation, and it puts a horrible taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about, that kind of boiler room that I was in. For ADHD one-man shows like myself, how do you manage? And he spelled ADHD wrong, which is absolutely brilliant. I corrected it. I love this. That resonates for me too, Mark. How do you manage the sales aspect and production aspect of your business simultaneously? Great question.
Yeah. So it's really hard when you're doing fulfillment and sales. One of the things that people get wrong a lot, it relates to the sales as a numbers game thing. So you think like, if I take more sales calls, then I'll make more sales. But if you're drained and tired and like not excited for that call, you might as well have not had it. So it's so important for you to be aware of your energy and when you're going to be best. Is it in the morning? Is it in the afternoon? And what is that number of calls? I would say absolutely not more than 4 calls a day if you are fulfilling your own services and doing a bunch of extra stuff. 4 is really pushing it. So you can take less calls and convert more of them when you're higher quality. And you're also wanting to filter those calls, again, with like some type of application ahead of time or something that uncovers whether they're a fit or not. And you're not just like, oh my God, this person will agree to a meeting with me, so I'm jumping on. Because then you're just going to be spending a lot of time talking to a lot of people and getting nowhere. And it feels incredibly discouraging when it has nothing to do with you or your offer. It's that you're not talking to the right people. So you really want to be precious with your time. And when you are, you will make more sales. And generally speaking, you have like a certain capacity for clients, and then you have to like bring people on. Before you do that, you increase your prices and then you bring people on. So, when there's demand, prices go up. It's kind of like the formula.
And I'll add in there, just in a very granular way to help with ADHD, calendar blocking is a phenomenal tool to use for yourself to really stay accountable. For me, it's about getting me off of one task to the next because I get like blinders on. So I kind of have the opposite issue of like, when do I turn that side off? And calendar blocking is a really great way to create boundaries for yourself and organize your day. It's so simple, but people don't do it.
So calendar blocking, the time blocking doesn't work, but day blocking has worked really well.
Yeah.
So this day is for this, and this other day is for this stuff is for internal work, fulfillment, clients. This one's for sales calls.
Absolutely. Adam says, I love the idea of mainstream selling on a personal level. I've always taught that as relationship selling versus product selling. I'd love to hear more about your approach.
Oh, well, I went really far into the approach, right? What do you mean exactly?
Well, I think when he's saying relationship selling versus product selling, let's talk about, you were talking about the features versus the benefits that a lot of people kind of breeze over. One, maybe you can touch more on that.
Yeah.
And Adam, if that's not enough, please clarify for us.
So one of the things that does really stop people from making sales is they're not focusing on the result of their thing. They're focusing on the deliverables of their thing. So it's not even like the benefit. It's like, what is the result of it? So you're not selling HR services, right? You're selling your employees staying on for 10 plus years. So it's like really focusing on that end result, because that's what people want. They don't want a certain number of meetings. They don't want a certain number of reports. They don't want a software that has all of these cool bells and whistles. They want the ability to never be double booked, or you know what I mean? Like, so it's really understanding what the result of that thing is and connecting the dot for that person. Because it's really easy as the expert, to be like, obviously, this is why you would want this feature because it creates this result. Like, obviously you want HR because then your employees are happy and they stay. And it's like, well, even if it is obvious, you really want to take the mental working off of the other person and just connect the dot.
Love it. Love it. Adam, oh, he said thanks. So there we go. Okay, Mark. Oh, I know you. Let's see. What are your thoughts on presentations to sell your product or business solution, to sell your product, business, or solution? Assume that there is an inherent relationship already. What's the best way to provide your value proposition on solving the problem?
Yeah. So I would say that you really want to have a discovery conversation still. I don't really like pitch decks. However, proposals are absolutely necessary, and you do not want to email them. If you email a proposal, you're asking for it to be delayed, ghosting, all of those things. So whenever you're going through a presentation of a proposal or a pitch deck, you want to ask questions throughout it, right? So you're going to explain one part of it, and then you're going to ask, does that line up with our conversation earlier? I included this because you said that you had an issue in the past with the leads that you got not being quality. And so having this filtering aspect of it should really improve that. Does that feel like it will make the difference for you? You want to ask those things throughout the proposal or the presentation so that you know that you're presenting the other ones, they understand why you're presenting it. Because you just send that stuff ahead of time in an email, you're assuming that they have to connect that dot again. Like, I included this because blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And then you really want to ask questions like, what's your timeline for making a decision? You know, like a lot of people miss that. And so like, if you have something that's like custom or can be positioned as custom for the other person, then you definitely want to have a second proposal meeting. But in the discovery meeting, you want to ask about budget first. So it's like, that's a big mistake that a lot of people make too. Then they'll just go to the meeting and they'll present and they'll be like, that's too expensive. And it's like, well, damn, if I only knew. So, and sometimes you'll ask, what's your budget? And they'll be like, we don't have a budget, because their concern is that you're going to max out their budget. So what you can do when they say that is, okay, well, for what you're looking for, you know, to get a machine that produces 1,000 t-shirts every minute and comes with like lifetime maintenance or whatever, it's typically around 150,000 to 250,000. Like, is that realistic for you? And they'll be like, oh my God, no. And it's like, okay, well, let's talk about it. Maybe 500 t-shirts a minute. Would that still solve it? You know, you're able to kind of collaboratively and transparently discuss that before you go put the thing together for them, instead of you being in the meeting and you got it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I've done countless presentations throughout my career, like countless, and I've created countless pitch decks. But I think it a lot of times feels just like that. And I've been on the other side of that before, where I've thought I was going into a discovery meeting and then they go right into the presentation. And it feels aggressive to me and a little assumptive, sumptuous. So what I would like to propose is that you look at creating a presentation from after the discovery meeting, a
Right.
presentation that includes a customized proposal. And that way you are highlighting and visualizing everything, because I do think some people see things a lot better than they can necessarily hear them. And that way you have scope and everything very clearly laid out. But I totally also agree with you that if you email that, it's gone. Like, try to ask someone to open a PDF. You might as well ask them to like refinish your hardwood floors. Like, it's just, it's not going to happen.
Well, they
So,
just have, yeah. And even if they do, they have no idea what they're looking at or what it means to them. So think
right.
about what you do every time that you get a proposal. You flip to the investment.
Last
That's
page. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
So people a lot of times will put all this stuff in the beginning that's like our team and our mission and our experience and our work and la 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 la. And all that stuff should be at the back of it. The stuff at the front should just be about the other person and what they get.
Yeah, and Mark was saying, so it becomes a proposal deck versus a pitch deck, and preliminary meetings become discovery and relationship only. I think so, because you may discover in that discovery meeting that they're not a fit,
Yes.
right? And so why even get into all of that? Save the time and energy for both of you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Guys, if there's any other questions, please jump in and let us know. I have put Aleasha's, well, Bernie, of course, because Bernie keeps us going here, has put contact information in there. I do know, while we ask our, to not give offers on these master classes, I do happen to know that Aleasha has a special offer for anyone who does reach out to her after this call, of ways that she could bring some immense value for you in a very specific way. So I encourage you to connect with her and find out about that. She is an incredible human, and I just cannot recommend her high enough. She's made a huge difference for me personally and professionally, and I just appreciate you so much, your expertise, your friendship, you letting me call and vent to you when I need to, because working mom to mom, the struggle is real.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see you this fall.
I know. Okay.
So it doesn't look like we have any other questions. I just want to thank you again so much for your time. Guys, we've got everything in the chat. So if you have any questions, want to reach out to Aleasha or to me, please do so. Next week, we have Mike Pfister on with Seamless AI. Seamless is a tool that we use at Appreciated Asset. It's one of the many data sourcing tools that we use. But he's going to be talking about how to use AI and how to use these resources to really grow your sales, rather than just buying a bunch of software. So I'm excited to have him come on and tell you guys about that. And other than that, thank you all for being here, and I hope you all have the best day ever.